All right, good morning. Welcome back to the GameDevShow. I think that might be a little bit loud, but how's everybody doing today?
Great. How are you doing?
Doing good.
Quite well.
Good and nice and warm with my fake fireplace behind me. So you got Powell, Yori, Andrew, and Greg all here today, and I think we're going to talk about a couple of the things that Yori has just thankfully noted for us, and whatever questions might pop up, and then possibly a little bit about getting sick at Unite. So it sounds like fun. So if you're here with us in chat, please say hello and hit the thumbs up and all that stuff. And then we'll just get going. So I guess, well, why don't we just start with the sickness? Who's sick now? The two.
Silence.
Yes, the two who went over to Unite, right? So I'm curious, how was the event? We all talked about it a bit last week and some of the announcements, but did you guys have a good time just there hanging out and talking to people, or how was the whole thing?
I think it was great. I got to see Pavel and other people in person, which was really neat. I did get sick. I think I got sick because I just didn't sleep enough. And then on the way home, I ran for a plane that I probably should have just accepted I was going to miss. But I decided to be like it was a movie. I ran and I ran past the German security guy, and he had to call me back. Feel like if it was America, I would have been tackled, but it was German. He was annoyed for sure, but he looked at my passport and let me through. Excuse me, in there, case in point. And then I ended up sick after that. I think it was the running and lack of sleep, but it was a great time at the conference. Met a lot of people, which was neat.
Did you make the plane?
No, it was gone.
All that running and you still didn't even get it?
I in hindsight, it was definitely gone. There was no way.
Oh. Yeah. You got to try. I remember the last time I was flying back from Oakland, they transferred my flight across the airport, and I didn't know it until right before, and I was running, and they were closing the door when I got to the gate. I was pushing a stroller too. I'm like pushing a stroller and running, and yeah, the gate, they're like closing it, like, oh, there you go, like, come on in.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. And I assume you had fun too.
Yeah, the conference was great. I think it was as good as the ones before 2018, so they're going back on track with conferences. Meet a lot of people I knew at Unity, a lot of asset developers. So yeah, it was a great conference for networking. Oh,
great. Yeah, if anybody in chat went, let us know too. I'm kind of curious. You guys got cooties at Unite. Yeah, it sounds about right. I feel like it's almost impossible to go to a conference and not catch something, though. You never know what it's going to be. I feel like I always get some kind of sickness when I come back. I always feel, I don't know, terrible like the next day or two. It could just be traveling and all that. Anyway, there was a question in chat real quick that Pablo was asking. Do you guys think Unity is going for netcode for game objects rework when they say accelerated multiplayer game creation for Unity 6?
So there is one thing that has been going around in the Unity forums regarding multiplayer, and I don't feel very confident talking about it because I don't remember it very clearly in my head. But there has been talk about introducing the ability to add a prediction for competitive titles in Network for Game Objects, which is a massive amount of work. I can't express enough how much does the default usage of Unity not align with the ability to do predictions and rollback. So if they do that, it's going to be easier to make competitive multiplayer games that actually matter. Other than that, they have something that isn't quite a rework, but more of an addition to the Unity editor that they keep building up on, which is the multiplayer play mode package that is currently experimental. You can actually use it right now. They've been reworking a lot of stuff behind on the engine itself so that they can do this. And this is like straight up the thing that will accelerate multiplayer game development the most for you. Specifically in that it's a tool that lets you have multiple versions of the Unity player or the game view in the editor. And whenever you press play, it starts playing all of them. And whenever you press stop, it stops playing all of them, which is great because now you can start up a multiplayer session immediately. The current workflow without that requires parallel sync. It requires your own solution. It requires building the full game every time you want to start it up, and you don't have plugged in editor debug by default. So it's a mess compared to what MPPM gives you. It literally lets you see multiple editors, game views with their own console logs. So if any one of them gets an error, you know which one it is and what the error was. And you can even pause, and it pauses all of them. And you can give them different tags so that they act differently. So you can say, this one is a player, this one is actually a game moderator or whatever that has like superpower, admin powers, and this one is the server and it has no players, but you can see what is going on in it through its own lens. So that tool being worked on. Other than that, they have improvements to the Unity transport layer that they're working on regularly. Version 2.0 also has compatibility for a network simulator, so you can introduce artificial lag as you're developing, so you can see how it is to have your game lagging without doing a lot of third-party things for it. Netcode for game objects is getting better through the packages improving and new packages being introduced, but I wouldn't call it a rework outside the prediction thing, which only helps competitive multiplayer games. If you're working on literally anything that's not competitive multiplayer, you already have a perfectly usable version of netcode for game objects. I'm saying that with an asterisk because of some very specific things.
Yep. Yeah, and I think the competitive multiplayer stuff that they're going to do first, my understanding was that they're looking at dots first and then probably the other stuff after that.
Yeah, and to be fair, the netcode for entities is amazing.
Yeah.
Netcode for entities is like straight up something out of a dream, except you have to use entities. Literally the only thing that isn't good about it is the amount of boilerplate involved and lack of package support for certain situations, such as basic character animation. But if you can get around that, it's a great package. And there are already multiple games on Steam, for example, that use netcode for entities, and they're using it to great effect. Some of them got like bestsellers. They work really nicely. It sucks for modding a bit, but I'll get into that later. If you played Wizard with a Gun or PlateUp, both of them use netcode for entities, as far as I can tell. Or rather, they use entities at minimum, and I know that they're using some version of netcode for entities, kinda, or something similar. So yeah.
Yeah, and for everybody who hasn't seen multiplayer play mode, this is what those windows look like. You get this little extra window. I don't have the inspector or the hierarchy on, but you can turn them on right in here. You can toggle those on. And then in the normal window, the tags Yorai was talking about, they look like this. So you have these windows. You click to enable the different players, or you're separate up to 4 windows, and then you can create your own tags, and then you can just read those tags from code and then do whatever you want. So here I just have it set the player's name, select their car, and then it can optionally start them up as a host, a client, or a host running through the lobby system, or a client running through that. And there's just a little script that reads those tags and then goes through the process to give me all 4 of my windows in exactly the state that I want when I'm testing, just by hitting play and not having to launch a whole bunch of other things. So it's super handy, and it's one of the main reasons that I use 2023 and all my coursework stuff for multiplayer now is for multiplayer play mode. It's like the key reason.
Yeah. For the person mentioning that the MPPM package broke down, I don't think I ever experienced that, but I did experience some regressions in its behavior as the versions go up. So right now I am staying with MPPM 0.3.0 as opposed to anything beyond that, specifically because it runs the smoothest for me there are advantages to the versions above that, but the main thing that you would want to have is a higher default Unity version, like the actual Unity engine version, because MPPM relies on that to a great degree. Like, there are things that would straight up not work if you're on an old version of Unity compared to what the package says it supports.
Nice. Oh, anybody else got any other thoughts on the multiplayer stuff? Or if anybody's got other questions, feel free to just ask them in chat too. Yora, you mentioned using the latest version. I know you were looking at the changelog for the latest version of Unity that just came out, the 2023.2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the 2023.2 text stream came out as Unite happened, and I decided I would go and look what's new. And I can very clearly say that all of this is small things that help, nothing game-changing. That said, I have been relying on assets alongside the usage of Unity. So a lot of the things that I've added are things that have been solved by assets before, but are now available to any Unity user without the assets. So that is a good improvement, because now you can just start a project without having to import anything, without having, if you're working with somebody else, you don't have to have multiple license for whatever it is you're importing, and then you can just enjoy functionality without the assets. I did have some list of things that are noteworthy mentions if we want to go over them.
Yeah, I think that would be good. Are they on the blog post too? The noteworthy things?
We can go over the blog post first. There are things that are not on the blog post too. Let me just throw you the link real quick. So yeah.
This is it, right?
Yeah. This is the 2023.2 text stream, and for those not in the know, this will be the last 2023 version, because the 2023.3 is henceforth renamed Unity 6.
There was a bit of confusion about that too. A lot of people weren't sure if it was going to be with 23 or 24 was getting renamed to 6. So
yeah, I personally wish it would have been 2024, because everybody who started a project on 2023.1 are basically excluded from long-term support while staying on the old license of Unity. If you want long-term support, the LTS version, as it were, 2023.3, which is what would be the LTS based on the old format now, is nixed out of existence, and you have to switch to Unity 6, which is on the new license. Now, that said, the blog posts as the license stuff happened did very clearly articulate that the current version of the version slated for the new license is the 2023 LTS. So you already knew it was coming, but you already had projects on 2023.1. So,
yeah. Greg is back. All right. So out of the stuff that was in 2023 on the blog post, what was exciting to you?
Well, the thing that got to me the most is that they finally have the shaded graph integration with UI, which is something so basic that they could have added it 4 years ago with 10 lines of code, and life would have been better. Life is better now, but life could have been better for the past 4 years without having to rely on Amplify Shader Editor, which is straight up superior either way. Yeah, so there are a lot of things to go through here. I do think they're worth mentioning each and every one of them, just to make sure people know they exist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do we start at the top with scalable rendering?
Yeah, sure. So the scalable rendering, in a very broad way, they just improved a lot of stuff that you already use, so that things will run faster, and things that were blocked arbitrarily are no longer blocked arbitrarily. This is a lot of stuff that Unity had all the code that they needed to support these things in the past. It was just internal, only for their use and not for your use. And on top of that, some improvements to the engine. Paul, did you say something? No? Okay. So they have the adaptive prov volumes that you've seen on the Unite. This is a very good quality of life improvement. That said, it has its own workflow caveats. I will probably want to get into at some point. I haven't explored it enough to say whether it's a deal breaker for me or not. But adaptive prov volumes are great when you can use them within the confines of what they were made for.
Can you give like the 15-second explanation of what they are for people who've never heard the term before?
Yeah, okay. So Unity has lights. Lights are heavy to calculate. Lights are hard to make. If you want to make lights better, you have a thing called a probe. You put it in a point. It collects the light for that point alone. All the other lights in the scene are therefore ignored. It massively speeds up the calculation on the scene. But one source of light isn't enough, so you want to have multiple light probes. Traditionally, placing light probes took a lot of time that you didn't want to spend placing light probes just so your scene can be lit nicely without breaking the bank on performance. So adaptive probe volumes say, look at this area, Unity. You pick the spots for the probes. I no longer care. And adaptive probe volumes literally fills it up with probes for you. It uses technically different implementation for the probes that is better, that supports streaming. So if you have a very large scene with a lot of flight spots that you want covered, it will do that for you in a better way, because it literally has better tech for it. And it also supports better sampling for the lights, so you can have per pixel lights, which previously wasn't available with the old light probes version. So it's basically baked lights, but more efficient and faster to bake. That's the short version. Adaptive probe volumes literally makes it so much easier to author, because you literally say, look at this entire level. I don't know where probes should be placed. You place them for me. Place them uniformly. Look at the tight spots. You pick to put more probes there. Great. I don't care. You do that. Yeah,
it's kind of automating that process that used to take somebody with at least a bit of artistic and technical experience and knowledge. And now it's you just drop the volume.
Yeah. That's for me. It's just, I never liked placing light probes. I'm probably like everybody else, and it's horrible. But automated sounds so nice.
And there was a question. It does place them in a much smarter way than just a grid, right?
Yes, and so it places them in a grid, but it recognizes when the grid has a lot of free space, and if it doesn't, then it starts subdividing the positions in which it places the probes. So tighter spaces or places with corners will get faster probe positions. That said, it's still not perfect. They are doing what they can within the means of simplifying the process of finding where to place them. So you have to guide it a bit. There are sometimes it may misfire and put a probe in a wall, or it may put it like in a place that's not the most ideal. You have tools, extra components that you can place in the scene to say, this area is actually blocked from having light probes, and this area actually has like more specific information. So they do have tools to let you fine tune it where you need to. Just remember, in the end, it's still light probes, and it's still like just baked lighting. So yeah.
Should we move on to the GPU lightmapper?
Yeah, sure. So I mentioned earlier that you have like baked Unity.
Did I hear a grunt?
What?
I thought Powell was grunting about the GPU lightmapper.
Oh, what's the story here, Pavel?
I haven't tested yet the 2023.2, but earlier it was mixed up results. Yeah, it could make great things, but it could just break entire scene, and it was hard to find what was breaking, even if you had everything done correctly. So I hope if it's out of preview, it works now better.
It sounds like Unity light baking in general, though.
Yeah.
Not to trash talk it too much. There's a lot of work. But basically, Unity light baking process is a very long and arduous process in terms of computation. They literally try to bake the best lights doing simulations to make it look the most accurate it can. And to do that, you have to do a lot of things to help Unity do that properly. And traditionally, it has been using a CPU lightmapper, which the CPU is very good at big, heavy calculations that are slow and hard to translate to let the GPU, which is way better at doing graphical work, do. And it wasn't necessary. The GPU lightmapper is way more fit for the task because the GPU is literally good at doing a bunch of simple operations together, and light operations can be expressed in a simple way. So having a GPU lightmapper speeds up the process for it, and they also have the adaptive or interactive preview thing that lets you like look at only the area within your viewport as a lit thing done dynamically. I have not tried it. I do think one thing here that is really worth mentioning is that they removed the auto-generate feature as part of this, which is like something that should have been done 7 years ago.
Yeah.
Auto-generated lighting is straight up the thing that bogs down the editor the most, had the least value ever, and you generally, when you make changes, you make them in a batch. So at least having a cooldown before it starts rebaking would have been a smart thing to do, but they haven't done that. So disabling auto-generate, good. Thumbs up. Even without the GPU lightmapper, just good.
Yeah, I've tried it before. It is definitely drastically faster, at least if you have a good video card. I don't know what it's like if you have an old beat up video card that barely runs, but if you got something fast, it's like, I mean, not just a tiny bit faster. It was like 10 times faster at least.
Yeah. I do want to point out that there is a long time standing asset on the asset store. I think it's called Bakery that does light baking. Supposedly it's a better user experience still. I have not compared the two though. So it's not information directly from me. It's from somebody I talked to. I did not dive into the details.
Bakery works great for me. If nothing changed, it should still be the better choice if you want to buy an asset that makes light maps, it's better still.
Yeah. Do you guys want to pause real quick for a question that was in chat?
Sure.
Yeah.
Totally unrelated. I think this might be an interesting one. Dark Rainbow Sprinkles said, what is the game dev programming role that gets hired the most at companies? It seems like a pretty simple one. I'm curious if everybody is going to have the same answer.
I actually have no idea.
Okay.
You see, my thought process is like doing circles right now because there's so many caveats to that question.
Thinking of in a typical company, what are there more of than anything else? Because that's the one that's getting hired the most.
Yeah, but I would have right now how the market works. The thing that's the most in each company isn't the one that will make you be hired quickest. That's for me that are two different things, yeah. Because companies need the most just normal programmers, yeah. I would say gameplay programmers. I think the most, yeah.
Yeah.
That would be the most.
I would say gameplay programmers are probably hired the most, but like you said, not in the most demand. If you want to be in demand, there are other things.
If in demand, I would say technical artist, which can be from programmer, and it can or graphic card programmer. This two, if you're the regular graphic programmer or technical artist, you will find a job in a matter of minutes, maybe hours.
Yes, I find the same. It's much easier to get a job as a technical artist or graphics programmer because there are so many fewer of them out there. I mean, it's tiny compared.
So if we are looking at the scope of this question as what has the highest hiring rate when it looks for a job, there are the 4 unicorns of the game industry that if you're working in any one of those 4, you're guaranteed to find a job as soon as you put up your like, hey, I'm looking for a job sign. Those being the technical artists, networking experts, physics or math wizards, and what was the last one? I'm blanking out. Come on. I forgot the name.
I can't think of one. So
Yeah, but you can look it up. It's an actual term, I think, the 4 unicorns or something. It's the performance.
Performance optimization.
Yeah. All dev tooling too. Yeah. I think it was dev tooling, and I confused it for the performance guys, which are necessary in every company. So, like, but a lot of people just don't care and just pump out software that they don't need. So, that is why I said I was going in circles, because you have a very high hiring rate with that, but like you're not the unicorn. That said, what gets hired the most? Big companies will hire a lot more than small companies, and big companies will take like anything they can get. So they have a lot of like junior programmers, or every game dev job needs a game in the end, so you need a gameplay programmer, so you can game that question out. That said, in the most serious aspect, be one of the 4 unicorns of the game industry, and like you can get a job in a snap.
To be truthful, each of these jobs requires you to be good at math. Each of these 4 unicorns, if you find in the final aspect, you will have to.
No. So
not networking.
Networking does rely on math, but you
have to be that good at math. Like not compared to the other things. The other things seem much more complicated. The networking math's not that bad.
The dev tooling is arguably easier than the
dev tooling. For most of it, you don't need too much math.
I would. Most of the dev tools that you need to
not
write.
Your tools, Pavel.
Yeah, but most dev tools you have to write are mostly the tools that need quite higher things to do. Yeah, you don't write dev tools for things that you don't need to do.
No, but you do write dev tools to speed up the workforce, like in all tasks that they do, even if it's organizational asset management that like auto imports things. That's not something that's complicated. It's something that needs a very thorough thought process, and rule engines, but not math.
We have different aspects and thinking of math.
Fair.
Algorithms are math. Planning is math. Depends on the level of math you're talking about. Yeah.
Yes. Everything is math, right?
No, not everything. Yeah, but most of the things regarding tooling is math.
I agree.
If we're going that way, sure. That said, in my own opinion, writing tools that work beats out writing tools that run well.
It depends. It depends.
Again, it depends on what type of tool you're making, but I'm talking broad scopes. When you're making tools, you have a lot of tools that will just, somebody needs something to work. Doing it as a one-off process will save the company hundreds of thousands by opportunity cost for not having to spend the next 2 weeks on this and spending only 10 minutes on it. And then once that's done, you do never need it again. That is a perfectly fine thing to just write a fast tool for. Give it to someone.
Yeah, I agree. But if you need a tool that 100 designers will use, and if you can fasten it by 10 minutes each action, you will have optimization when you are going into the same. Yeah. So it depends. In small tools, you don't need anything other than programming.
Yeah, in the verticality of
even in some big tools, like I when it comes down to like if you talk about design tools, I've seen shitloads of design tools that are not very optimized, but still save hundreds of thousands of man hours, and they could have been slightly better, but the fact that they existed was the most important part. Like the speed of the tool, a lot of it depends on like their workflow too, because with designers sometimes they're just mass inputting data and you want that stuff to be really fast. Sometimes they're just kind of going around and thinking and building at the same time, and in that case the responsiveness doesn't have to be, you don't have to be able to save off 1,000 new NPCs instantly because they're not creating them like that. So the performance part is important, but it's not as important as making the workflow part. I think getting that workflow down, minimizing the amount of steps that they have to do, the amount of duplication that the team has to do. And it could be anything from design tools, art tools, or even the programmers just wanting to do a build and put a deployment out onto a dev server. That should be that's another thing that if you have a team that's got tools development, you're going to automate that almost instantly so that nobody's running any manual processes, or at least as very few manual processes as possible. Anyway, but I think that's the easiest math-wise, because when you get into like the graphics stuff, you start to build graphics tools or like in-engine tools, they tend to get a bit more complicated with the math, and then you start to build, the actual rendering shit, it gets even more complicated.
Let's say this, the closer you get into having your tool actually put something that is related to the production of the game, like straight up appear in the final build, the more likely you are to need heavy usage of math. Specifically, the technical designers discussed in the comments will work the most with math, because that generally tends to be the most excruciating field in terms of data transformation.
Or networking and prediction. Then you're going into math.
Yeah, you really are. Especially if you want it to be performant, but let's move on from that point.
Should we continue on to some more of the changes?
Yeah,
I
sure.
think there were some questions in the chat.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Where can I learn AI prompt engineering skills for generating programming code and managing AI assistant programmers? This is one I have no idea.
Probably trial and error.
Andrew.
How would you say trial and error? Right? I don't think there's. I suppose I've seen prompt engineering courses from Midjourney personalities, right? People who have been YouTubing Midjourney, but I don't really know if it might be helpful, but it's such a new thing, and I'm sure it changes all the time. But I would say just use it a lot and try to get comfortable to the point where you just start having a sense of what you might need to ask it in order to get a response you might like.
I would ask Corvallis too. Might have a good answer.
Yeah, my knowledge in AI is pretty limited, but first off, Google it. You want to understand how your prompt gets interpreted by the AI, because it learned a huge data set. You need to talk to it in a way that it can understand what you actually want the most first. Then you need to understand how to construct the logical thing that you're actually looking for in the clearest way you can. This works in general conversation. This works in literally understanding what you're talking about. There is a thing in programming called having a rubber duck around, because you want to have something you can explain clearly, and the easiest way to do that is trying to explain it to someone. So having literally any person or inanimate object in the area in your vicinity, so you can explain to it what you want. And once you can do that clearly, you can understand how to make your request to the AI, which is essentially asking a bunch of people or the aggregate of their way of talking to answer to you. So yeah.
Dustin had a good idea too, asking ChatGPT that question. I found that ChatGPT is really good at giving you prompts for other generative AI tools like Midjourney. When I was working on the D&D campaign and generating art for it, all the Midjourney prompts were generated by ChatGPT. And most of the time I could take them straight into ChatGPT and maybe just add, the resolution, -AR16:9 or something. But in most cases, whatever it gave me worked pretty good.
Yeah,
I've done that too. It's great. Go ahead.
It's only going to get better at this over time because we haven't had a society that is based upon how do I ask the right question, which is how the AI is kind of like steering us right now. So we would have better advice from ChatGPT and similar as we get more into AI generation in the future.
Yeah,
But,
and
yeah,
one thing
ahead.
I would start from is taking AI tool that is generated based on a good code. Yeah, so we using ChatGPT is okay, but using something that was specifically prepared to generate code is even better. Yeah. So I think Unity is trying to do it with Muse. The JetBrains is trying to take OpenAI and train it on their code. So I think it's also a good thing to start not on some basic thing like ChatGPT, but try something that's generated on code.
One thing that the AI will be really good for you in regards to programming is it can bring up a lot of stuff that you'd never heard of and don't know, or ways of doing things. And that alone can increase your own understanding of what you're working with. So once you see an AI doing it once, you can start learning how to do it yourself without the help of the AI, or asking it to do something more advanced with the thing that it just revealed to you. The person who mentioned the ChatGPT is great for simple Python tools in Blender. Absolutely. I have multiple Blender scripts that range in the hundreds of lines doing complicated things, and the AI has been very good at reducing the amount of manual work I need to do for that. That said, Blender got really better about that recently, especially with the new Node tools.
But speaking of AI stuff, did you guys see all the news last week about them creating Skynet and secretly hiding it and getting fired and all that?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Check what
It's been
happened with
interesting.
OpenAI and Sam Altman.
I can't
There's
wait to see the
lots of
movie.
rumors.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it'll be interesting when we see what actually happened. Yeah.
Matt Wolf has been doing,
when the AI comes for us, and
yeah, Matt Wolf has been doing a really good job of documenting the whole saga. It's been crazy.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite AI YouTube channels, by the way. I'll share the link in chat.
Regarding the comment you have highlighted right now about not waiting until AI can have the whole context of our project, I'm actually against that to a degree. There are things that can poison your question when talking to an AI. You probably heard the term poisoning of the AI model, but including unnecessary context for your question as you talk to someone can just confuse them. You see that in every conversation. If you're talking to someone about complex pick any topic and a freaking elephant goes nearby, the person is going to look at the elephant and they're going to absolutely ignore whatever you're saying unless they have very good concentration. The same can happen to an AI if you ask it things and give it context that does not matter to what you want. This is why you need to be very surgical when talking to it. Giving it your intent is fine. Even if you ramble a bit, that's fine. A person understanding more of your context is fine. Not a person understanding all of the stuff you have. And an AI that has all of your project has all of the stuff you have. It doesn't have the context of what you want. So I'd be careful about that.
There is some value in it having access to all of that stuff, though, right? So it could look through for context if it needs more info about
but
what you're asking.
Yeah, but it also can sometimes just slow down the process. If I had to explain all of my experiences to you every time I ask you, can you pass me a freaking pen or, I don't know, paper? Of like, I am here because I drove to this and then I went on the plane and that made me think about that. And then I figured I should talk to you about this. And then I forgot a note. And then you don't need all that. Sometimes you just need a question. So the context can slow things down.
Well, one thing regarding context, like GitHub Copilot will look at any tabs you have open in the editor for context. So if you want really good autocomplete based on what you're working on, just open up whatever files are relevant in tabs in your editor, and it will use them.
Yeah,
Yep.
thanks, Chris, for teaching me that.
It's good. Yeah.
Yeah. So
I like Dustin's comment. There was a question up above I wanted to go to, but just saw an elephant comment was a little too funny. Yeah, there was the one that your eye caught that I almost missed. Let me go find. I started. There we go.
Yeah.
Is it more difficult to get work at a big company though, because they tend to have their own engine and often have positions only for seniors or interns? So in your experience, do you think it's easier to get a job at a big company, small company, startup, mid-size, or?
So I wanted to specifically talk about they have their own engine.
Yes.
No matter. Yeah, I just wanted to pinpoint on that because there is something a lot of people are very afraid of when they hear, oh, it's a completely different thing. I won't know anything about that. That's not how most engines work. Engines are implementations of concepts to construct the final product. They do the same stuff in the end. They just do it differently. But once you understand the stuff, you can just understand how they're doing it far, far quicker. The idea that Unity has game objects and Unreal has actors, not that different. The implementation, very different. The concept, not. I spawned an actor, I spawned a game object. I want to draw a mesh, I have a mesh renderer, or I have the graphics, I forgot how the Unreal calls it. Each one of those, like, they have different names, they have different fields. In the end of the day, they draw the stuff you want drawn. And if you have an editor, it has a hierarchy, or it has a sheet of things that should show up, or whatever. You can learn one engine really well and immediately move to another engine and catch up so much quicker, just because you learned the concepts. So
that said, if they're custom engine, though, you do need to know some C++. You need to be comfortable with that and familiar with it, because 9 out of 10 of them you're going to need to be at least understanding, reading, and writing a bit of C++. You're going to need to be familiar with it.
On that note, that would first off be filtered in the hiring process. Second off, that would stand by the same standard of you learn one language, you learn the concepts, you can go to other languages very easily. All of us switch languages very often as soon as we need to start working with auxiliary tools for our work. If you're working with Blender, you'd probably want to write a Python script once. That doesn't look all that different from C# once you understand the concept. If you're trying to use Lua because you're doing small modding in whatever sandboxed operation, not that hard. If you're using AWS scripts or what have you, they're not that different.
Oh, yeah. No, that's not to say that it's like a difficult thing or anything, but just make sure that people realize that it is something you have to make sure that you, before you're able to dive in and understand that engine, you're probably going to need to know some C++. I mean, you'll be able to get at the core part of it, but in my experience, most custom engines are not, the editor tooling for them is not always the best. And there's a lot of stuff where you're kind of bouncing back and forth. So you got to be at least a little bit comfortable with that. But I wouldn't let that dissuade you. I think you just you spend a little bit of time learning C++. If you know C#, it's super easy to make that jump.
And one thing that's really important to mention is that if a company really does have their own engine, they'll have training time. They can't expect to hire literally anyone that has worked with their engine without being in their company. 9 out of 10 cases.
Yeah. Most places will expect you to be productive in like somewhere between 30 to 90 days. You know, like where you're kind of ramping up and stuff. I mean, some places will be obviously not like that, and be like, "What the hell? You haven't done anything in your first week." But that's not the norm. Norm is you spend some time like learning the engine, learning the tools, and like you said, it's a lot like using any other editor or engine, but things are just usually a little bit more clunky, and there's a little bit less stuff and features. There are things that you're used to might not quite exist when you're working with custom stuff. I don't know, there'll be some custom things that work great for their specific game.
As for the part about them only having positions for seniors or interns, first off, they hire interns with the purpose of getting the intern actually working at the company. There's no point to get an intern that isn't going to stay in the company. It's literally the training time, the testing time to get the person in. It's not we are getting you in and then throwing you out. That's literally anti-purpose to what internship is. As for senior positions, I would say the word senior is literally just deterrent for people who don't know what they're doing. Because if you're going to be working with a custom engine and you've never worked with an engine in the past, they're basically tutorialing you into game dev as a complete newbie. And that's not something that people hiring you want. They don't want to hire a random stranger and start training them up into a job that they've never interacted with. So if you got to use the common tools, you can become a senior pretty quickly in a new engine.
I would say there's also a trend from time to time where the job rec says senior when it probably doesn't need to be senior, and they just put it there. They just slap it on there. Like every job, it says senior this, senior that, senior this, and they hire people who aren't seniors in that, but they're just looking for, I don't know, cutting the wheat from the chaff a little bit, maybe, or something. But it's a trend to kind of overstate what senior means, and so I would say always apply anyways. It takes not too much time these days to apply for a job, so give it a try. Don't let that dissuade you, I guess, in other words.
Yeah, I agree. People tend to way overestimate a lot of job recs. Not all of them, but a lot of them. It's like this culmination of everybody putting shit together, and then somebody looks at the price difference that they think in their head for a senior versus a mid engineer. Like, let's just do senior. And to Mr. Bubbles' comment of the requirements 5+ years, again, same deal. They're not really looking for exactly 4.5 years. Sorry, you need 6 more months before we even look at you. It's just trying to level set an idea in their head of what they're thinking this person looks like, but what the person actually looks like could be very different. They're just looking for somebody to do a job. They're trying to describe that, trying to give a sense of what they're looking for, but you might actually be the best person for that job, or the best person right now.
Yeah, I have some story about it. I don't know if I told it on GameDevShow. I worked for space industry using Unity engine for several years. Yeah, I also was. I'm still helping in HR for some companies when we are looking for some people and they want me to test them. Yeah, we were looking at Asti Polska, Child of Airbus for a programmer, mostly 5-6 years of experience. Yeah, so we had at final stage we had 2 candidates. One was 10 years of experience, senior programmer, C#, everything. Yeah. And second one was a school dropout who programmed for the last 9 months, only looking on tutorials and learning by himself. Yeah, because he wanted first go to military, then he changed his mind and wanted to go programming. To be truthful, checking these 2 persons, I took the school dropout and hired him because he in 9 months went from total beginner into someone I could say he was almost a regular in 1 year, and that was so extreme person that wanted to learn, was enthusiastic, had motivation, and I knew that in half a year to year I can make him a very good regular, almost senior in very short time. And this 10-year experienced person didn't have any motivation to change his job. For me, he was just sending CVs just to check what's on the market. He didn't let anything for past 4 years. He then didn't know any new technologies, nothing. Yeah. So we are in HR. They are mostly writing 5+ years because that's a good estimation between regular and senior if you want someone in the middle. Yeah, but it depends on your knowledge, on your motivation, and what you learned in the past few months and or similar things. Yeah.
The one thing that would deter you from getting a job with intelligence and like the ferocity to learn every day like that is that big companies may have some automatic processes or people who don't understand the job doing the filtering for the CVs So they will discard people who don't have the check notes, the checklist notes of what they're looking for arbitrarily. So 5+ years of experience might actually be necessary because a person who doesn't work at the job is going to be the one doing the filtering, and they're going to discard because they're not seeing the 5. That's literally the only deterrent, though. Everything else is done by people, and when it's done by people, people will understand what is actually necessary. And most of these arbitrary things are not going to be part of the calculation.
Yeah, I think a cover letter can help in those situations as well. If you think that you're qualified for a job, even though you don't have the 5 years and ability to juggle that they want, explain what you do have and why, and if you that human might look and be like, okay, this seems reasonable. Does this make sense, hiring manager?
The one important thing here is that you said it, is that when you send a cover letter, it reaches a human, so you're sidestepping the automatic process. Yeah.
And I think to your point, you're right. The people reading that don't know, and so that's an opportunity. If you write a letter and you pique their interest, they might be like, I have no idea if what this person says is actually sidestepping the requirement, but it sounds like maybe it is. So let me give it to the person who's doing the hiring, and they can decide whether this is actually a valid sidestep.
And one final thing to wrap this up. If you really care about getting a job at a big company that you don't have the qualified checklist notes for, try doing the things here. Try sending a cover letter, try buffing whatever you can in your resume, because you can succeed if you try, you can't if you don't. There is a chance.
Yeah, and I just want to say, I think with big companies, it's often a lot easier, unless it's a big company that's like right at the top. Like, you look at Google, Apple, Facebook, Blizzard, or Riot. If any of the companies where there's like insane competition, it's difficult. But outside of that, you go like beyond the top 10, top 20. All those other huge giant companies are much, much easier to get into. They have a lot more positions open. And if you happen to know somebody there, like, by far the best way to get a job always is just know somebody. Like, it works better than being qualified or anything else. I've seen it more times than not. Qualifications matter a lot less than friendships. So know somebody that works there, and you'll have a much easier foot in the door, even if they don't work directly in the department that you work in. As long as they have friends there.
Yep.
All right, let's take this question Powell wanted, and then we could may jump back over some of these release notes. We got a few more minutes. Should I learn 3D math before game programming, or both at the same time?
For me, it depends on type of programming you're doing. Most of the programming you don't need math. You just need the basic concepts. If you're programming something that uses 3D math, then you have to learn it. But that's the only thing. Yeah, I know many programmers who don't know 3D math, and they are great programmers.
Yeah, I found this book. Sorry, I just want to say, I found this book, and I think I was going to ask you guys both your opinion on this, or actually everybody here, your opinion on this book. It just popped up. It was Essential Math for Game Devs. There's a digital version that they had for, like, I think, third the price. But sorry, Yara, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that in programming, one of the core things is you construct the instructions of what you want done, and that covers a lot for any field that you want to work in. You don't need to know math, you just need to say, add these two things, and then show it to the user or whatever. And in that, knowing the math can be helpful, but brute forcing or writing what you want to actually happen, if you can do this clearly enough, will compensate for the lack of math skills. So learning to program will assist you in that. Now, one more thing is, a lot of the game programming things that you will want to do not have a spatial space. By spatial, I mean like an actual space in which units exist. And that helps you a lot because positions don't matter, ergo the 3D math doesn't matter, or the 2D math. And on that note, 2D math and 3D math are almost exactly the same, just one more axis. Usually you calculate things in separate axes, or you have a unit vector, which literally just goes into any direction, but it's like doesn't really matter. So 3D math is a pretty quick thing to learn. I would recommend learning programming and then learning how to express math with programming. You don't actually need to know the intrinsic details of how we got the equations that we have, and you don't need to run raw equations. When we are working in programming and we want to say shoot towards that direction or whatever, we literally just get the point, the thing we're aiming at, and we're saying that direction. We don't say calculate all the numbers to do that by ourselves. We're saying get that direction. There's literally a literal direction vector provided to you by most game engines that you can use. You can literally say, take this basketball and point it so it's forward is towards the hoop.
And do like a look at in Unity on your transform even.
Yeah, you can literally say transform.forward equals the direction.
You do transform.look at and give it another transform and it'll point right at it.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah. Whatever you want.
Little cheats. Yeah. It's good too, because if I had to do all that math every time, I would definitely fuck it up at least once. Probably
and
a
you
lot.
can even do calculations in the inspector. Like if you want to do a linear interpolation of a bunch of things and arrange them, you could do it in all kind of different shapes by using sine and cosine or whatever, right in the value in the inspector.
Yeah,
I did a video on that.
Yeah, the inspector supports arithmetics, and it even works better because you just define the range that you want. You don't actually run the calculations. You don't say position times 1.33333 if you want to have like things spaced out over a certain direction. You just say from 0 to 4, do the things that you need. Just
I would say that math becomes a need when you're developing tools that use 3D graphics, that you are technical artist, graphics programmer, and especially if you want to go into developing your own shaders using just math. Because, for example, going to Shaded Toy and creating some amazing 3D graphics just by doing math. Yeah, that's. I don't know how many people know Shaded Toy. I would suggest to, if so, we want to see what math can do, is the best place to check. Because people that are amazing. And one more thing, if you want to learn math, I think Freya Holmer's YouTube channel is also one of the best to learn from YouTube if you prefer to learn from YouTube.
Yeah. Freya is amazing to learn a lot of the more game-oriented concepts in math and how to express it in the context of programming, which is more important, arguably, than knowing the intrinsics when you're just focused on development. Shader Toy is wizardry expressed via math.
No.
Okay. Yeah, that was bad of me to say. There is no magic, but basically people know how to express a lot of very interesting things using only numbers and the proper equations for them. It's a great tool to learn how to do things that a lot of people wouldn't believe you expressed with numbers. I do want to say that I'm surprised you forgot to mention about physics and networking in regards to learning the math, because physics is straight up the worst place in which you need it. Literally can't run without it.
No. To be truthful, on math, I was studying math. Yeah, I was also we have several usage of physics and some trainings in physics. But to be truthful, most of people from physics I know only the basics of math. They don't know advanced math on the level. I would say many game dev programmers know math better than many physicians. I'm not talking about doctor, professor, but on the master degree, I would say, yeah, from my experience, and we have great physicians that know physics very well, and they were coming to mathematics to our department to calculate something because they didn't know how to do it. They took the calculations and they just do their tests. So it is needed if you want to do physics yourself. Math is a good start, but it's a little different math. Yeah,
Surprising.
surprising. I know very many people from maths with master degrees in maths that can't do physics at all.
Yeah, I'm
Sounds
curious
insane
how
to
many
me.
people in chat can read and understand and have any idea what's going on here. I'm gonna guess it's probably like 1 out of 10.
I gave you the simpler sample. I think it looks simpler, but it's also fun in maths. The last info in private chat. Yeah, this one. It's just simple code. Yeah, just how many? 10 lines of code.
Yep. You can even see like most of this immediately. There is a loop going on. It calls a method. The method just calculates arbitrary things. We can already have some values here that
Yeah,
could be
and
related to common terms that you will learn as you look into shaders.
and the best thing is on shaded code when you go into comment section and see the people are giving comments to optimize it, to change it, and you can see the whole discussion on the mathematics on this level.
The one thing I want to bring up here in regards to shaders specifically is that a lot of people consider like it's just how things look, but it's not how things look, it's how they will actually render on your screen. The camera is part of that, and a lot of people ignore that. And the camera does a lot of jank things just to express things that are closer or farther away, and you can mess with that to a great degree. And if you know how to do that in your game development code, you can make some really awesome game stuff.
Oh yeah.
Portals. That Cartesian space game.
Oh, well, I just realized what time it is, and I'm gonna get going in just a little bit. Anybody got any other big? We didn't even get halfway through that list of stuff, but we're gonna finish the whole thing next week. But anybody got any other important news?
I just wanted to add that in addition to Freya, her channel, Sasquatch B Games has been doing a lot of shader graph stuff lately. Pretty good stuff.
Yeah, definitely subscribe there. I'm subscribed to both, and I try to watch as much as possible. Freya stuff I always like watching. Like it's like the first half I'm following along, and then the second half I've totally lost it because I have no idea what a bunch of these math terms mean. And all of a sudden I'm like, wait a minute, I gotta go look that up. Real quick. But yeah, it's usually I always get something awesome from this, so I really like them.
Yeah. So I do think it's better if we can just wrap up the changelog post real quick. We don't have to get into everything, but I just think it's worth for people to see.
Yeah, let's go through the rest of those.
Yeah, for those who haven't been here, we started off by reading the Unity 2023.2 changelog. We're still here. We're still relatively early on in the post, but it's worth going to look at. So we were on the new API to move light probes after baking. I mentioned earlier on, you bake your lights. They are generally stuck in place once baked. The internal code to support moving them has existed for years, but you had no access to it. Now you can move the probe away, which means if you have multiple scenes and you bake each one of them, they couldn't coexist before if they covered the same space. Because if you had a 000 area and it had one light in one scene and a 000 in another scene, you couldn't move the scene with the lights. Moving baked light probes lets you move the whole scene. So now you can bake separate rooms and lay them out nicely. This can let you have nicer looking, randomly generated dungeons, just as the example that is shown here. There are a lot of other uses for that. For example, you can bake multiple light sets and then move them around, and you can have multiple conditions for the room to exist in.
So you can just like swap them all out and do a different set of baked lighting?
Yeah, literally just move one, put another one in, etc. It also works great if you're doing procedural buildings of items. So if you baked a room for a house and you want to let the player place multiple rooms, each one of them can have their own baked light sets and moved around with it. So that's great. We can move to the other one because there isn't too much value in this outside that. The HDRP enhanced environment capabilities, literally just night sky and some visual fidelity improvements that don't have a lot of tangible means if you're not diving really deep into it. HDRP had daytime lighting; it did not have that good night lighting. So now you have a full daytime loop that is supported by HDRP. So if you're making a very pretty generated daytime time of day scenario for your worlds, this helps a lot. I generally don't see too much value in it, because it's like if people start using it too much, you're going to have a lot of worlds just to like have the same time of day shader. It's going to be seen in one spot or another in the future. VFX graphics got multiple improvements, nothing too major, but a lot of things that are nice. The biggest
6-way lightning for UAP, that's quite a big change for it.
Yeah, but you had the ability to do that before.
Only if you wrote it by hand. There wasn't nothing.
Yeah.
If you didn't have already shaded.
Can you explain what the 6-way lighting is for somebody maybe hasn't seen this yet?
Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, so normally when you're making VFX is billboards, billboards that have normals that in the basic version before it, you only could have it lighted from forward, and if you knew how to do it from back side, so if you had lighting that went from right side up, it wouldn't be correctly lighted. So right now we have 6 directions from which it gathers the lightning. It helps, especially for most particle effects, it didn't have any problems. But for smoke, which shouldn't be just billboard, it should be volume. So it didn't have the correct lighting if you moved the light in the scene.
Yeah.
Okay.
To add to that, the general workflow with quads was that the lighting is baked. That the smoke tended to have like baked lighting into it, because you didn't have the ability to pull for lights from different directions. So now the new technique is basically, how would it look if it was lit in this direction, this direction, this direction, this direction? You just have textures for how it looks lit in every direction, and then they get blended together to say, okay, this is the actual direction from which you should sample the light, and therefore you get smoke that looks more volumetric. In the end, though, this is still just cards pointing at the screen. It's important to say that it's not that you can go and exist within the smoke. Now it's literally just cards facing your camera. You go to a certain point, you will not see the smoke anymore. So there is that. There is also one more thing that matters very little to most developers, but is actually quite significant if you care about it. Motion blur is now supported, or more specifically, you can provide motion vectors for your things, and that can have a lot of value if you're trying to make fancy shaders. So just worth mentioning there. And then after that, we can move to the shader graph integration with UI, which is the best thing since sliced bread in regards to shader graph.
Okay, let's switch back over to there.
Yeah. So, shader graph integration with UI. Generally speaking, you have Unity. It has UI. It has multiple implementations of the UI. They all had problems. The most common one is Unity UI, or the actual term for it is UGUI. In that, they use special shaders to render the elements on the canvas, and those shaders are not meant for world display, so to speak. And shader graph was initially concepted to make things for the world. It was missing some things that were required for things to properly render on a canvas that is part of UGUI, or the Unity UI, or whatever you want to call it. And this fixes it. There is now a new canvas mode for shader, canvas output, so to speak. And that canvas shader will now let you do anything you want within the means of UGUI. Now, the major advantage in this is that you can make fancy effects for your buttons, for your overlays, for literally anything that wasn't easily doable with shader graph before. You had to manually write out the shaders or use a package that supported it, like Amplify Shader Graph. With this, you can do things like dynamic bubbles that go in and out, flashes that change their color, things that like have fancy glow on them in case you care about magical items. All of that can be done dynamically and really, really nicely. A lot of the best game UIs you see are shader heavy, and that was not an easy option in Unity up to this point. It's important to also mention this is like only for UGUI, which is the current Unity UI for runtime, while they are working on the UI toolkit version that is done very differently and does not support shaders at all. Previously, you could make shaders without this. If you're on a higher version of Unity, for example, you still have access to this. You just have to do it manually. Now it's built into shader graph, so that's way easier for you to make. UI toolkit cannot do this at all yet. So yeah. Whew. And then we just get into the boring stuff of platform enhancements, which is a bunch of small things. Support for MetaQuest 3, the new demos in which they have the extra interaction toolkit, which is letting you do a lot of stuff if you care about that. And then they just make some honorable mentions of like improvements to the engine in general. The WebGL target improvements, the gaming services, and the UI toolkit getting some quality of life improvements, reducing boilerplate. The one final thing that is kind of noteworthy of a mention here is the audio random container. And it has a very fancy image if you want to scroll down a bit more to see it. So that one basically lets you do is set up an audio with multiple clips. So it will pick one at random, and you can also control how they're played to a certain degree. And that lets you create a far more varied experience without having to have any code involved, which traditionally was a headache for most developers who are not comfortable with working with audio, or wasn't very customizable without doing a lot of this stuff yourself. So them just putting this into Unity is great, and it even has like a play pause preview, if I recall.
Dang, I just implemented my own based on Jason's simple audio event in my latest video.
Yeah, it's awesome. Something we've probably all written, and now it's just a pre-made template, so I don't have to write it for the 5th time for my next audio test.
Yeah. There is still the advantage to writing your own, in which if you want to do anything more advanced, your own will let you extend it however many ways you want. Yeah, this is made by Unity and is not extendable by you. So,
So Jason's will also randomize the pitch and volume, not just which clip it's playing.
Yeah, but this also has that. If you look in the image, there's a pitch and it has a pitch and randomization, but it's not per clip. So if you care about per clip, now you have problems again.
It looks like it's got a lot of features though, and just going to work. So definitely
probably cover like most use cases.
And that's the main notes that they chose to highlight. There were some other pretty significant ones in the full changelog. That said, if you need to go, then it's best we don't get too much into them.
Yeah, I think next week we go over the whole changelog of all the big stuff. And I wanted to share this too because Andrew popped it up. It's all of the like visuals of the HDRP changes, and it looks like it's not just HDR. It looks like you can just go over to the tab for URP too, and you can see the changes that have been in there.
Yeah, but this is all versions. You need to look specific for the 2023.2 version, and then you can see the things that are relevant to it within this.
It's down here.
Yeah. And a lot of this stuff is images of the would be nice to have in a full implementation. They didn't actually fully follow through on some of these, or they reduced the scope as they walked along, and maybe sometimes they move things backwards in progress. Also, if you look, it says released, but it's the 2023.2 beta. They didn't actually update it fully for the release and what is actually there in the end. Some of this stuff is also significantly improved in the beta versions currently available. I forgot the actual number, but usually when you're working with betas, you'll get access to things, and then in the release, they're actually kind of downgraded because some features are not fully release-worthy yet.
Well, before we do go, Corvallis is here. I wanted to see if we could answer that AI question a little bit more. If people want to get into doing AI stuff and doing prompt engineering, is there more to it, or you're kind of like my go-to AI? Yeah. So is there anything? And also, like in the game stuff, is there any AI stuff people should be grabbing? I saw there was like a flash deal on an AI image generator for the next 10 hours or whatever. I don't know if I was looking at that. I don't know what that was. Is there any new AI stuff we should be paying attention to? And are you going to be around next week?
I am going to absolutely try for next week. I'm going to try to get back on a human sleep schedule. College has kind of thrown that off severely. This is the first day I woke up at a correct time. So I'm like, you know what? We're doing the Game Dev show.
Yay.
But in order of that, Powell and Yorai covered it pretty extensively for when it comes to AI tools. Specialty models are easier to get your desired outcomes for. Try to be specific and to aim for specificity. So for code, I often won't try to overload it with everything I want to do. A very specific mechanic, give it the context it needs, and generally it'll walk itself to your solution. And it sometimes creates novel like syntax or solutions that you can look into further and get additional context for. But I have noticed there is an uptick in terms of both like courses and learning just for how to prompt an AI. And the context can vary because, again, each model often can behave wildly differently depending on the prompt. Sometimes it is a little bit more of an alchemy than a science where you violate a traditional norm in prompt engineering and it just really works for this outcome. But it does help to probably watch a few of these. I really like a channel called The New Boston. That's where I learned how to program with Java and C++ back in 2012, still making tutorials. So coming back to their AI prompt stuff, it was fun to get bonus context for. And I guess for AI in games specifically, keep a lookout on stuff like InWorld, of course, with their AI NPCs. Jim Lovebird Labs in chat had also shown me some really good text-to-speech solutions, so things related to creating voices, and a really good deal on the asset store where it's a one-time fee, but they regularly give you monthly usages rather than just a pay-as-you-go. So for a lot of testing and iteration, that's great because you don't have to pay a subscription.
Was that the Deep Voice one?
Yep, it was that one, Deep Voice AI. There might be a little bit of scalability, especially depending on how large or how systematic your game is, which is just a natural issue when you use any form of service-based technology in your stuff. That's about it. I don't want to plug the tool I've been working on because I did make a breakthrough for it, but part of the Sleepless Nights have been making videos for that, so hopefully more content soon. And yeah, did I wrap all that up in my quick train?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, thanks. It's good. I'm excited to talk next week too. If you're around, to get into some of this AI stuff a little bit more. And I also wanted to share Powell's Nature Manufacture assets are all on sale. Unfortunately, I have them all, so I can't save any money. You can see they're all grayed out, but they're all up there. And I think Andrew, you got a couple things up there still, right?
Yes, only one right now. The Fantasy RPG FPS Complete 13-pack bundle. Very good name, very catchy and memorable. That's
the one with the number 13 in it. That one. Although, is it 50 or 70% off?
It's 50% off, and it's an even more % off with your coupon code.
That's right. You get your extra 10 or 3% off. Go put in that coupon code. But yeah, anyway, we'll be back next week. If anybody's got questions, drop them into chat. Maybe we'll talk about Muse and some of this other AI stuff, and a bit more about what's going on with 2023.3 or Unity 6 and all that stuff. Other than that, I don't think I have anything. We're going to do a student call tomorrow with the authentication lesson. So if you're in the multiplayer mastery course, just watch for that. That's it. And then I guess we'll see everybody next week on Friday. Thanks again. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and all of that stuff.